Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Rachel and I'm so glad to have you. I apologize that it's been a minute since I recorded my last video. I had actually recorded 3 different videos answering specific questions that have been sent to me from different viewers, and then I recorded them on the wrong recording software, and the audio was so messed up that I couldn't publish them. So I'm having to now go back and re-record them on the right software, so that was my negligence. But in the interim, from when I recorded those and then figure out that they were recorded poorly, the massive fire in Reading broke out, and that has basically put my whole life on hold in every way that you can imagine. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm talking about today. I just wanted to post a real video about the situation of here in Reading, and just kind of break away from just talking about BSSM and use my channel to talk about other issues, pressing issues, you know? Yeah, so this is August 10th that I'm recording this. Hopefully I'll put it on YouTube within the next couple of days. Life is not back to normal yet. I wish to say that it was. The fire started on the 23rd of July, so about 3 weeks ago-ish now, and I remember when it started, we saw the smoke out in Whiskeytown, and no one thought anything of it because fires are so common in California, and I think there's just this belief of like, oh, you know, the firefighters are going to handle it, it's going to be fine, and I think it started out pretty small. It was started from like a tire blowout, so I don't know if it was like a regular truck or like a semi-tractor trailer, I don't know, but they had a tire blowout, and basically the spark stream from the metal of the rim, you know, rubbing on the asphalt, shot all these sparks up into the woods, and that's all it took to start the Carr fire. It was named for that because it was started by this like Carr powerhouse, Carr. Yeah, so anyway, this fire started about 3 weeks ago from something so simple, and it turned into a beast. By Wednesday night, so that the 23rd was a Monday night, by Wednesday night it was darn near out of control. And most firefighters, I think, like Cal Fire and stuff, were at different parts of the state fighting like other big, huge fires. And so I think it was up to our local guys and like whatever other Cal Fire guys we had at the moment, like to fight it. But the terrain of where this fire started out in Whiskeytown was so severe, so unforgiving, you know, just really rough, mountainous, dry, densely wooded, overgrown forest. That's pretty hard to fight fires in. And it's like, imagine a bunch of Christmas trees, like a forest full of Christmas trees, dry Christmas trees. What happens when you cut your Christmas tree down and you let it dry out in your living room and then you throw it on a bonfire? It like goes up, you know, like no time at all. Well, we have like a fire, like a forest full of those kinds of trees. And so not only is it hard for firefighters to fight in those landscapes, but the fire is just like going nuts because it's the perfect tinderbox for this crazy explosions. So it was just like tons of explosions. And I was watching like some video footage of the California Highway Patrol who was watching the fire, and this highway patrolman was 2 miles from the fire line itself. And the fire, he said, the intensity of the heat of the fire 2 miles away from the line was so severe he had to like leave. He had to get in his car, and even in his car it was too hot for him, and so he actually had to exit like his location. And then there was like another news reporter who got pretty close to the fire itself. I don't know how he did that with the heat the way it was. I mean, because you got to think Reading is also like 100 degrees minimum by day during the summer, and it cools off in the nighttime to like a cool 85. It's not like like super cool. And then so it's just hot all the time. So by day it's like over 100 degrees, and that's without fire. So imagine how hot it is close to the fire, even at night. And so this other newsman, he was there, he was closer to the fire line, and there was 100-foot walls of fire, 100 feet in the air. Like, consider that. The video that he was taking was so scary. The fire was so loud. It was moving so fast because there was nothing stopping it. You know, the winds were high, and, you know, just blowing it right through Whiskeytown at such a rate of speed, and it was just lighting up these, like, evergreen Christmas trees that were just throwing these huge, like, licks of fire up into the air. It was just, I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen fires like that. I've never lived anywhere where there was wildfires, certainly not that kind of a wildfire, because this landscape is not kind of your normal California landscape. Like, Northern California is very mountainous. It's very wooded. It's actually got a lot of greenery. SoCal is like a lot more, you know, kind of desolate in terms of greenery and evergreen trees and stuff. But Northern California is very interesting in how it burns, I guess. Yeah, it burns violently and fast. And so that day, that Wednesday, the fire was up to, like, I want to say it was like 4,600 acres of land burning. And that morning, when we woke up, Thursday morning, the fire had grown to over 20,000 acres overnight. And it was, like, barreling down. It was past Whiskeytown. It was past Old Shasta by that point, and it was moving now into the Redding city limits. And when we woke up, I mean, it had been pretty smoky in the atmosphere for, you know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but by Thursday, it was like other level smoky, you know, like really, okay, now I'm getting concerned kind of thing. And so my roommate and I, we went and we kind of drove around the community. We went up to Shasta Dam because that's where they said the fire was going to head. I think that they thought it was going to cut directions, or maybe at the very least they thought it was going to go like south and north, you know, and so they were kind of trying to anticipate it, but the firemen kept saying, like the fire chiefs even kept saying, they had never seen fire behavior like this before. They said it was extremely erratic, like it was uncontrollable, it was uncontainable. And after Wednesday night, they basically decided that it was uncontainable. And so they pulled their resources off the fire line of actually trying to like hold the fire back, because they were like, we can't. And they basically retreated to the communities that they anticipated the fire starting to go after. And they just went to protect property at that point. And the thing of it was the fire was so hot, like fire is, but also so fast, so violent, so windy. It started creating like its own weather system in it. And I don't understand that fully. It's just I'm repeating a lot of what I heard and also witnessed. But it was just so uncontainable that there was just nothing anyone could do. And the smoke was so severe and so intense, and like this huge plume. It looked like a volcanic eruption, literally. It looked like a volcanic eruption of smoke, except wider than just like what would come out of like the dome of a volcano. It was like over such a huge, like, massive landmass, you know. But because of the intensity of the smoke, it was very hard for like choppers and, you know, planes that were full of fire retardant to drop any of it, because it was dangerous for them to fly into that kind of smoke. So, you know, the ground crews were, suffering, the air crews were suffering. It was just a fire that was just not going to be met with the level of resistance we wished we could have had, you know, because that fire was unforgiving, man. It was going to rip through. And he did exactly that. And we saw, you know, I'm sure you guys have seen on the news now at this point. This is international news, this fire. But yeah, I mean, it devastated a good portion of Western Redding. You know, there was massive fire tornado. I mean, there was like little firenadoes that I think they're pretty used to seeing in fires, but the huge fire tornado that we had that was like a giant tornado, literally, but made of fire. They have never seen anything like that ever. Like, they're sending all sorts of meteorologists and scientists and all sorts of people up here to see the damage of this fire because they've never seen anything like it, where it created its own weather system that allowed its winds to get like up to 155 miles an hour in the core of this fire. And otherwise, Redding has no wind. Like, there's no wind. It's just a dry bowl. Like, Redding is in the Sacramento Valley. And then Whiskey Town is like these little, well, pretty big mountains, and then like little like hills and cliffs that neighborhoods are kind of built into that meet right up sort of the city center. And then the rest of the city is kind of like leveled off down into this like bowl. But up there where all this activity was happening, it was kind of hilly, and densely populated with gated communities and suburb kind of establishments where people lived. And it just ripped through there. Like, yeah. And so I don't know exactly what the final number of homes destroyed, but it's over 1,000 homes destroyed. And countless other buildings that weren't homes. And so that day, when Thursday was happening, the Thursday, we lived on the east side of Redding, and the fire was really attacking the west side of Redding. And we knew we were fine. I mean, for the most part, where I lived like in the heart of town. Not downtown, but like the other part of town where like most of the shopping centers are and stuff. And not a lot of concern because there's not a lot to burn. There's not like trees and stuff that would just really easily catch this fire and keep it going. So once it started hitting the city limits, we knew the fire was just by virtue of having a lack of anything to consume, it was going to slow down, you know. It's just exactly what happened. But it did devour anything that was in its path as it kept moving, even if it wasn't moving as fast as it had in the woods, you know. And that tornado was just insane. Like, it wrapped metal around like light poles. Like, and an F3, they said it was an F3 level tornado, which is the biggest tornado the state of California has ever had. So we had a wildfire and a tornado at the same time. I'm trying to, like, I guess be light about it, or I don't know. It's been devastating, and it's been really freaking sad. And I think in many ways I'm just tired of talking about it, but I also know that it's an important thing to document. But yeah, so for me, my personal experience of that, once it came through on Thursday, it just kept pushing in. It kept pushing in for days and days. But Thursday was the day we decided to leave. Not because we felt our home was in any sort of danger necessarily. Rolling blackouts began later on that afternoon, like late afternoon, early evening, the blackouts started. No power. And that became a real concern because at that point, the temperature was around 114 degrees during the day. And not only was the smoke choking the life out of us, still is for that matter, but it was, becoming very severe. The threat of not having clean water, that started getting tossed around as an issue that could, be faced, was Redding's water getting contaminated. No power. And then the smoke. Put that together, and that's a recipe for anybody to become very sick, die, struggle, suffer more than they need to at the very least, even if your property isn't in immediate danger. You don't want to be in that kind of heat with no power, no air conditioning, no way out. And so we just began to consider, like, wait a minute, we might need to do something, and they were starting by about Thursday afternoon, I think, maybe even sooner, but for me, that I heard, they were evacuating different parts of the city by Thursday afternoon. But they were trying to, like, not create a panic, And so after we had driven around the community, sort of taking it in and seeing for ourselves what you could see by day, and you couldn't see a lot by day. They had roads blocked off pretty early on, that the fire was already, coming down on. And then otherwise it was just so much smoke that you really were having to base what knowledge you had off of what you could directly see and feel and what the news was saying, and, the different press briefings that the fire chiefs and sheriffs and stuff were giving the people. And of course, it always felt like you weren't getting enough information quick enough, and that's probably the thing everyone always says in the wakes of, during and after disasters, is we didn't know enough soon enough. And I think the fire departments and different things are trying to figure out a better system of getting information out to people, like immediate information, without causing panics. But for us, we just decided, you know what? We're going to go ahead and pack a bag. We're going to pack an emergency bag in case we need to leave. Not because we are afraid for our property, but because we just can't be here if the power goes out. And then we started considering, what will we do? Where will we go? Those kinds of things. But we kept a pretty level head about it all day. Until that evening. About 9 o'clock that night. It was fully dark, and the power in my apartment was starting to flicker a lot, going on and off, on and off. So I filled my bathtub with water, and we had bought some masks that day and some extra jugs of fresh water and some candles, because we were still thinking maybe the power will go out a little bit, but they'll restore it soon enough. And so we were making all the plans to just stay. But my anxiety and my adrenaline was getting pretty high. I'd never been anywhere with fire. I didn't know what was going to happen. And every report at that point on Thursday, the California Highway Patrol, fire chiefs, they were all saying this fire is out of control. We can do nothing about it. They weren't like, get out, but it almost felt like we don't know what's next. And our thing was, as long as it doesn't jump the Sacramento River and the I-5, the Interstate 5, as long as it doesn't jump those two things, we really don't have a lot to worry about except for power outages. And then it jumped the Sacramento River. It did what I would say most of the community didn't think it would do, because the Sacramento River is a big river. It's really big. But if you're talking about 100-foot walls of fire that are pushing themselves forward with 155-mile-an-hour winds, it doesn't take much actually to throw fire across a river and it start up a new spot fire that just keeps moving. And like they said, it was extremely aggressive fire behavior, so that's exactly what it did. And it jumped the Sacramento River, and then it moved up through Quartz Hill and Keswick, and down into Clay Street, and, moving its way, trying to move down Lake Boulevard, basically. But then in order for it to cross over from West Reading at that point into East Reading, it had to cross also the Interstate 5, and that was what it never did. But on Thursday, we didn't know. Once it crossed the Sacramento River, it was every man for himself, and it says, we had no idea what this fire was now capable of. And we weren't getting information fast enough to feel absolutely confident to remain. Because I think the thing I also learned in this kind of a disaster is you don't know all the fallout that actually comes from a fire. When you think of a fire, you think of property damage, like houses burning down, buildings burning down. But actually, there's so much more that comes along with fire. Smoke inhalation, the toxicity of the air, because now that smoke isn't like bonfire smoke. That smoke is full of arsenic, lead, asbestos, all these chemicals that are in home building, especially old homes. And so that's filling the air. Depending on what it burns down or what it gets close to, it's taking down power lines, it's affecting gas lines, it's affecting it could affect the whole grid system depending on what it's close to getting closer to as far as the grids and such. So it can affect water contamination plants. It can affect there was something else. But yeah, power, of course, which is what I meant with the power lines. But yeah, it is just multi-level. Not to mention, if panic happens, People are trying to rush out of the city, so there's clogged roads, clogged highways, panic at gas stations, there's gas is running out. There's just all of these things that begin to erupt that you don't think about at all, because you're narrowly thinking about, oh, well, my property's safe. The fire's not going to get here. But that's not even the half of what's actually going on during a fire, and what the risk levels are. And then you have to think about retirement homes and rest homes and hospitals and elderly care facilities that if their power goes out, I mean, I might be okay. I might make it even in that kind of heat and choking smoke. But like the elderly, good gosh, or just so many things that have to now have evacuation plans and exit strategies. And then on top of it all, you feel in the spirit this anxiety and terror, honestly, beginning to fill a community. Like, you can't not feel it, especially if you're a feeler. And it doesn't matter how much peace you walk in, you're going to feel fear. You're even if it's maybe not your own, you're going to feel other people's fear. And your adrenaline kicks in. Your mind goes straight into not self-protection, but like survival. And not in a selfish way, just in a very all right, here's what we need to be doing. This is what we need to start thinking about. It's like the mind kicks out any part of you that's like, let's just keep a level head here. And the mind is like, no, I'm level headed, but we're going to make these, plans. And so that's what we did. And so by 9 o'clock, like I said, the anxiety levels were rising. The danger level was rising. And so my roommate, were sitting down in the living room kind of deciding, well, what do we want to do? What are our options? And I had a friend in San Francisco that I was thinking about trying to go down. And I'm sure if we just posted on the internet with friends that lived in other parts of California or even other parts of Redding, we could have just gone somewhere. But she was like, well, my family has offered for us to come down where they live, and they live in LA. And so we started considering that option. And then we remembered our friend Andrea. She was staying at a different house, and their power had gone out utterly. And they were actually only 4 or 5 blocks from us, because I live kind of close to Bethel Church, and she lives even closer, and their power was out. And so we invited her to come over and at least spend the night with us, be here with us so you're not in the dark at your house. That's terrible. So she came over, and then on her way over, we decided to just sit there and pray, me and my roommate, and we just prayed. And we're like, God, what do we do? What do we do? I feel the anxiety. I feel the adrenaline. We have a place to go if we really feel we should, but we don't want to overreact. What should we do? And Jesus was so clear to me. And he said, there's nothing noble in remaining. He didn't say, get out, or you're fine, I'm going to protect you, you're good. No, he didn't say either of that. He was just like, there's nothing noble in remaining. And so I took that to mean, you're good to go. Go ahead and go. So we did. We left. We packed up our stuff. And we didn't know at that point if any of the neighbors were thinking like us. We were thinking probably we're overreacting. Again, we weren't concerned about our property. That's not what our threat level was at. We were concerned about just the overall, what's happening to our city. And really, for fire crews and emergency personnel, it's in their best interest that as many people leave the community as possible during a time of trial and crisis, because then they can freely move about the city as and when they need to without traffic jams and all these other things. So, the more people who leave, really, in the end, it's better that way. And I've wondered, because they did say that PG&E and different utility companies were controlling some of the blackouts that we were experiencing. And I think that's preventative protective measures, so no sparks and different things when power lines are taken down don't create other spot fires. But I also wonder if it's just some way of kind of forcing people to leave, because once your power is out in this sort of heat, you're not going to stay in the community. So I wonder if it's kind of like a backdoor approach to get people to get out that wouldn't otherwise leave, probably. But just my idea. I don't have any proof of that. So when we decided to start packing the car, we walked outside and it was so crazy. It was eerie because so many families, I live in like the middle of an apartment complex, a pretty big apartment complex, and so many families were like running out to their cars and throwing their backpacks and their sleeping bags and just whatever they could get, just throwing it. And there were like little kids around like crying, and all the adults and parents were like silent. No one was saying anything, which is also weird. No one was saying anything. They all had their masks on, very like robotically, like going into the house, grabbing stuff, running out to the car, throwing it in the car, going back in the house, grabbing more stuff, throwing it into the car. And we were all like, okay, so we're not the only ones kind of freaked out by this. Okay, good, you know? And even knowing that we lived in a safer area of town, like, we're not the only ones concerned, which was kind of relieving, but actually only, like, upped the fear factor, I think, like, seeing that most of our neighbors were also freaking out. But yeah, and it was silent. That was also so eerie. Yeah, just watching how people behave in times of trial, because it was kind of like that thing of like no one wants to overreact, and like so everyone's trying to be like, but you're trying to be practical, but you're also trying to be safe. But we're all kind of in it together, and there was this like weird camaraderie of like, well, if I'm overreacting, so are you, you know. It was kind of a weird sense of brotherhood, I think, in the whole thing. But so then we threw our stuff in the car, and I did like 13 walkthroughs of the house, like unplugged everything, like turned the air all the way down, just threw out the food that would spoil, like, you know, just your mind was like crazy. It's so funny when I actually saw what I ended up packing when I got down to SoCal. It was like, I like threw in one shoe but left the other one, like, I don't even know, you just frazzled, you know? And so we left, and we were driving, and we decided to go down. There's this road that runs in front of the Trader Joe's. I think it's called Browning Street. And if you go over that road, you kind of crest this little hill, and you can see the I-5 running, and you can see by night over the I-5 down into downtown, which is kind of lower in the valley than we are. And if you go up this road that kind of intersects with Browning called Hilltop, it goes up on the top of a hill, literally, and it like has this beautiful overlook of like the whole downtown Redding and the Sacramento Valley. It's a really nice view at night. And we wanted to go up there to just see, because all we'd been seeing for ages was smoke, and we wanted to see the fire ourselves. And so we went up there, and as we were cresting the hill, looking out over the I-5 before we made the turn to go up on Hilltop, we saw literally a wall of fire taking over like the hills and the mountains that lead into downtown Redding. And it was, I cussed. I'm not gonna lie. It was the craziest sight. Like, it immediately sends like this eerie, adrenaline-filled fear through your body, because it's the last thing you expect to ever see. Like, it would be the equivalent of seeing lava, like, just rolling over those hills and into your city. Like, it's so unfathomable. And when I see it, I mean, I felt emotions that I've never felt in my life. And so then we went up to Hilltop, got out of the car, actually walked to the overlook to take it in more than, you know, those just few seconds of looking at it. And it's a sight I'll never forget, you know, for the rest of my life, because wildfire in and of itself is crazy, but wildfire coming into a city is like other level, like next level weird, like weird. And your city, it feels incredibly personal. And so once we, you know, took in as much as we could stand to take in, we became increasingly aware of like, hey, a lot of people are going to be leaving the city. There was all these rumors of like I-5 is backed up, it's total gridlock. Wasn't true. There was a ton of people exiting the city, but like traffic was still moving fairly smoothly. It was about 2.5 hours later, or 2 hours later, we left the city right at about 10:30 that night. Finally got on the road, probably 10:30, 10:45. And I think they started doing the mandatory evacuations of like really large portions of the city at around midnight-ish. And so that was when Reading, because when we were leaving, there was already huge lines at the gas stations. There were a lot of people leaving, but it hadn't reached that panic mode yet. And I had several friends who stayed back thinking they were going to be fine, and they ended up being part of the people that were forced to evacuate, and were then stuck in long lines of cars while the fire's on both sides of the road. Like, can you just imagine the fear? Like, man. But it became a complete panicked mess just a couple hours after we left. So I think we're very wise to make the decisions that we made. And we went down to LA. We got out. We drove all night. And we got to LA probably around 9 a.m. the next day-ish. It took us longer than it was supposed to take, but we stopped a lot. And stayed down there for a few days and just kind of watched the fire through social media and through other friends, and just prayed, you know. A bunch of my friends were talking about how scared Reading was, like the panic that was throughout the city all day on Friday, all day on Saturday, because it just kept coming. Like, the fire was completely uncontainable for days, even well into the city limits. It was uncontainable, and that's when it was taking out all those houses, and looters started taking advantage of, you know, the communities that had evacuated. And so the police were just stretched so thin. The firefighters were coming in from all across the state and all across the country by that point. And I mean, all you did all day was refresh your Facebook feed, watch more KRCR news, and just take it in. So we never really, like, rested in LA because your anxiety is just so high. Like, there was all of these conflicting feelings of, like, I left my community. Like, even if it was the best decision, the wisest thing to do, because we didn't know what was going to happen, it felt like fear had made decisions in a sense. And we knew it didn't. Like, the Lord was totally about us going, but I felt like I abandoned my community in a sense. Not that there was literally anything I could do. But then at the same time, when you were leaving, like, in the rear view mirror of the car, you could just see Reading on fire. Like, you could just see the fire lighting up the darkness of the sky and the smoke that was saturating the atmosphere. It was so eerie, and we just cried. You know, we cried on the drive down, because we didn't know what we were going to come back to. We didn't exactly understand what was even happening, because your mind has this, like, ability to, like, disassociate from, like, what's actually happening, because it's just too much to take in. But there was so much unknown of what is the community going to look like when I come back. Like, what did I just leave? What's happening? And it wasn't about, will my house still be there or will my car still be there? I mean, there was, like, maybe 5% of your mind that was like, well, I mean, it could jump the interstate if it jumped the freaking river. So maybe my stuff won't be here when I get back. But that wasn't where my mind was. That wasn't my concern. My concern was, what's going to happen to my community? Like, really? What's really happening? It was so not about me. I felt the weight of my community because I love Reading. I love this place. I love it. And it was being devoured in front of my eyes, and there was nothing man could do. For all the praying, it wasn't God's intention to stop the fire. It was his intention to be with us in it, through it, and after it, and blow our minds. But the fire was going on. It was raging. Just a lot of questions were raised in my heart, and fear and unknown and all that kind of stuff. And so while we were in LA, there really wasn't any time to really, like, rest, because we didn't know what we were going back to. And there was this thing of, like, you kind of want to get back, actually. You want to help. You want to do something other than just sit idly hours and hours away, like, wondering what your community's turning into. There's no rest in that. My body actually physically felt like it was in a car accident. It was so tense and so tight. I had terrible headaches. I still have terrible headaches, congestion, all of that from the smoke. But really the mental fog, the mental clarity, the mental anxiety, like just grueling anxiety of asking just question after question after question, and just watching the fire grow. And so today now, let's see, today's the 10th, so the fire has been burning for 3 weeks. And so by that Thursday, the day we left, by that Thursday night, the fire had grew to, I think, over 30,000 acres that night. So it grew another 10,000 acres that day. And today, 3 weeks in, the fire is at 180,000 acres. Now it's pushing 200,000 acres, but it is over 50% contained. So finally, they're on the downward slope of containing the fire. It took 3 weeks, but it is finally over 50% contained. And praise God, it was either Sunday or Monday, the winds changed pretty severely. What wind we had did change and push the fire from barreling down into the eastern portion back west and north. And so then it was kind of going back into the forest, into the practically unpopulated part of Whiskeytown National Forest, and moving on through there, which is why it's continued to grow so massively, because it's just got such, the perfect tinderbox to burn up, but it was away from the city. And I mean, the CAL FIRE and the fire departments, man, they threw every resource they had over those Friday, Saturday, Sunday on holding that fire line to keep it from getting into the downtown and further up Lake Boulevard. And I mean, they were holding that line so it did not jump the I-5 and get over into East Reading, because then who knows what would happen. And we know there were so many people praying for rain that never came. And, whatever that is, there's a lot that we'll understand later, or maybe we'll never understand. But I think the most powerful thing that happened was the ability to hold that fire and not get it across the I-5. And every small miracle in between, of every home that was saved, and every life that was saved, and every different line that firemen were able to hold to control that fire. While the big rains didn't come and the great spectacles didn't come, I think the miracles came through the power of the human spirit and the just people working together, and the community, for all the fear the community experienced that Thursday and Friday. I mean, there was a great coming together that happened in the midst and especially after those days. And the firefighters, just the love and support the community has and still has for the firefighters, and the love people have for each other. Like, it just became a very bonded and unified community through this. That's a miracle. But it was a very scary situation for many, many days. We came back on the Monday. We drove back Monday morning. Got back fairly early Monday evening to a incredibly smoky and deserted Reading. I think over 45,000 people evacuated out of a city of just under 100,000. So almost half the entire city was gone. Many of whom didn't leave Thursday, definitely left by Friday. And some continued to peter out as the fire kept digging in, because even though they were able to stop it in some areas, it was still very much raging in others, and the fire is aggressive, and wherever you stopped it, it was like, all right, well, then I'm just going to go this way. It was going to find a place to burn. But yeah, so when we came back, we all came back hoping to help. Bethel had, at that point, by the time we had returned, had made agreements with the Salvation Army to become the distribution hub for the Salvation Army at the top of the hill there where the main campus is. And so we had every intentions of going back and being a part of that. And for the most part, my roommate and my friend Andrea really did. I went up there, I want to say the next day after we got back. And I can't explain it, except they say, the fire trauma and stuff catches you at whatever point you are in life. if you're doing really great and you're really strong, you're really rock solid, like you can handle practically anything and you're going to keep going with full faith. And then other people, you're in a harder place emotionally, mentally, whatever. And the fire can devastate you in ways you don't expect, even if you didn't lose the property that other people lost, you know? And for I didn't know I was in that kind of state, but I mean, I felt like I felt the world on my shoulders. I felt like I felt the pain of the whole community, and I couldn't escape it. And I felt, and honestly, in some ways, I still do feel traumatized. And it's been this weird guilt thing because I didn't lose my house. Here I am in it, still the same. It's all fine. You know, polluted with smoke, but it's fine otherwise. And I compare my loss to someone who lost their entire home, and they're incomparable, you know? So I'm like, well, how can I be feeling this devastated? How can I be feeling this much trauma and this much grief when I haven't suffered like these 1,000 people who lost their houses? And so because I couldn't understand the way I was feeling, it only intensified the way I was feeling. And then on top of that, my health, man, the smoke, again, I've never lived anywhere where there's wildfires, so I don't know if you build up a tolerance to it or what, but like for me, my body cannot handle fumes of any kind, especially apparently smoke fumes and all the chemicals that are in it. And I have just been gone. I've had massive migraines, nausea, extreme fatigue, extreme exhaustion, deep frustration because I never grieved the fire for about the first 2 weeks. When it began, when we fled, we cried in the car, I think just from sheer shock. I mean, we were in shock for a good 3 days, I'd say. And then when I got back, I went into like this, like, well, I'm going to serve mode. And I served, and I couldn't. And then I was mad at myself because I couldn't. And I felt like the church was like, we need you, we need you, we need people. And I had no real reason why I couldn't do it, except I just couldn't do it. And I basically stayed in my house for days, honestly, experiencing emotions and feelings that I've never felt in my life and can't explain to you except except that it was just super traumatizing. I kept seeing the Reading burning by night. I kept grieving Whiskey Town. Silly, but not silly, really. I mean, that whole forest, Whiskey Town National Park, was just like burned to the ground. Like, that's huge. And I know it's not a house, but it was a place where I went every day of every summer since I moved here 3 summers ago, and it's where I've spent all my time. It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen in my life. And it's, you know, it's gone. Or I haven't been there yet because they still have most of the roads blocked, so you can't go see anything yet. But I can imagine from photos and from just how crazy intense the fire was and the fact that it started there, I can imagine what it looks like. And just knowing that it's gone and it's not this place it was, it's not this place I'll still meet God there, but it feels deeply personal, the attack, because it took things from the community and from me that go beyond just property. The fire stole a lifestyle. The fire stole the sense of safety. It stole, I don't know, it stole your naivety, you know, your belief that you can't be touched, that you're fine, you know, that the fires happen elsewhere, they don't happen here. Especially not tornadoes, too, like, it stole your innocence, and it changed the way I saw things, and it exposed you to feelings and emotions you've never felt, and fear you never known, and grief. Each person I've spoken to, whether they've lost property or they haven't, has just gone through grief in their own way. Some people are totally numb, they feel nothing. Some people, like me, feel everything, like way more than they feel is even justified for their personal situation. Others don't know how to feel, and they're just throwing themselves into serving because they just don't know what else to do. Yeah, I was very angry for the first 2 weeks. And, family, people who don't live here, people who aren't here, people who don't love Reading the way I love Reading or whatever, like, don't understand, I think, and don't really know how, especially if you've not gone through a major natural disaster. A lot of people just don't know what to say, and they always say the wrong things. And so it's a chance for grace. Like, it's people either talk way too much because they don't know what to say, or they don't say anything at all, and pretty much both of them are terrible reactions when you've gone through something traumatizing and you just really want to be heard, or you want to be comforted in the most basic way. And I think people's lack of understanding, or their fear of I don't know what to say or do, causes them to either say nothing or say the wrong thing or say a lot of stuff that's just like in every direction, and it doesn't benefit anyone, So I had a lot of unique and disappointing conversations with people. I also didn't hear from a lot of people I thought I would, that you would expect, would kind of show up in times of crisis. But, it's really unique how people do and don't handle trauma well. So you really leaned on community. And I think that really is the miracle of this, has been watching community figure out how to do this. And, the church was figuring out how to be a donation hub, and, some people could do that, and then other people couldn't. And there's no wrong or right way, I think, for people to handle a grieving, traumatic situation like this fire still is. It's still going on. It's only halfway burned up and controlled, so it's like still happening right now. If the camera could turn, all of Reading is still completely covered in smoke 3 weeks in. Completely covered in smoke. We have to wear these masks every day, all day, anytime we leave the house. Every day. Constantly having to detox. Constantly tired from the smoke. There is just so many effects from the smoke that I'm still figuring out and learning about. And then people are now going back to their normal lives and trying to do what's normal, but nothing's normal, the first questions out of people's mouths are like, is your home okay, and are you okay? Like, no one ever thinks like that. I think that's what this fire, it's so demonic. Like, it just stole life in a way. I finally moved out of the anger and into, I know there's like phases of grieving. There was like the bargaining stage is also like the guilt stage, and I had a lot of guilt, like that I wasn't doing more, that I hadn't lost more, that I felt as devastated as I felt when I hadn't lost as much as I did, or as much as other people did. I just felt a lot of guilt, which for me made me just shut down, and be also angry. And then I've moved on from all of that and just into like deep sadness now. Just like deep sadness of just accepting the community the way that it is, and also accepting that like I only know a portion of what really happened, and I only see in part this whole thing. Because honestly, like in a practical way, like the city is still blocked off in a lot of ways. The Whiskeytown area is blocked off. A lot of neighborhoods are still blocked off. So, like, 3 weeks in, and I still haven't actually seen with my own two eyes all the devastation, or even, like, a good enough amount of it to really appreciate what's happened. And that's hard because it's so unknown. You know, like, you're grieving something that you can't even see. You just feel it. And it's a bizarre thing, like, when your city has stayed so smoky that you still can't see what it even looks like now after this fire. And this place, Whiskeytown, this place I spent every single day in the summer, and I would always go, like, after school, even during the rainy winters, I would go up into Whiskeytown, I'd find a beautiful overlook, I'd park my car, and I'd sit there for hours and just talk to God and just, like, bask in the beauty, because he speaks to me so much through nature. And look at the gorgeous blue lake and these gorgeous green trees and these rolling mountains, and, like, knowing that all of it is, like, charred and black and dead is super sad. Not to mention all of the amazing people who lost their homes. Like, come on. That's a grief I can't even, like, relate to right now, because I didn't lose my house, and I haven't gone walking through someone's ashes yet. And 25 staff members at Bethel lost their houses. 75 staff members of our local hospital lost their homes and kept going to work and keep going to work, because so many people keep showing up to the hospital with major respiratory problems because of the smoke. Our own chief of police for Reading, Roger Moore, lost his house. It's a very personal experience, because Reading is, like, small, you know, it's kind of like, it's a city, but it's like a small city. And so even if you didn't lose your house, like, you all feel it. It's like everyone who lost their house, like, it feels like the community lost their house, you know? Like, it's just such a personal attack. It's like 9/11, for example, which is such a massive, like, jump, but it hurt the whole nation. Even if you didn't know someone who died, even if that wasn't your place of business or your workplace when those buildings collapsed, it hit you, you know? And I think that that's what this has been, is this fire has hit all of us. And I think anyone who loves Bethel can even feel this pain in a way, because it's like Bethel has changed the world in so many ways, in the Christian world especially. And it's like a personal attack, not on Reading alone, not on Shasta County alone, not on Bethel alone, not on any one person alone, but all of us. But, you know, it's like everybody in the world connects to whatever part of Reading means something to them. And to a lot of people, Bethel means something to them. And so I find so many people who aren't even here, but they're, like, feeling this, you know? And there's a lot to feel. And so I just... we're just getting through now. And there's a lot to be so thankful for. And the joy is coming, and the beauty for ashes and the rebuilding is all coming. But, you know, there's a pastor in the community who pastors the Stirring Church, and he actually posted on the internet the other day of, like, yeah, I know we're going to rebuild, and we're going to be fine, and probably better than before the fire, and all of that. Like, there's going to be plenty to celebrate, but it's important to grieve also. It's important to make space for grief and to feel it. And right now, like, now that I've entered into the sadness, it's like the grief, I finally feel it in the way I wanted to feel it. I didn't want to feel the anger and the guilt. I wanted to just, like, feel the loss in a healthy way, you know? And it's kind of cool to have seen, like, the stages of grief really lived out in my life. I watched my nature do it, and I was utterly powerless to how my mind and body and emotions reacted to it, in part, you know? But But now I'm just sad. I cry all the time, all day, at different times, just freaking no reason. um, and yeah, so actually, the smoke is still so bad and so severe. I think everybody is just at their breaking point in a sense, like not like going crazy, but just like, because it's just a lot of cabin fever. You can't go outside. You can't do really anything. So you're indoors all day, whether that's at your workplace or at your home. And, it's weird to walk outside of your house and feel like the air wants to kill you. So you can't breathe deeply. You can't exercise and run. You can't go for your walks. I always go for walks every morning, and I can't do any of those things. And so, there's just so much that changes about day-to-day life, even after the fire becomes under control, because until it's actually out, the smoke is just terrible. And the smoke went up into this massive plume into the atmosphere, so high, like a volcanic eruption, like planes at 30 and 40,000 feet. The smoke was coming all the way up, like from planes. They were taking photos of it the way you would a volcanic eruption, how it would come up that high in those huge, like sort of stagnant looking giant mushroom clouds almost. That's how this fire was, because it was so intense at the core. And what I think has happened, I don't know, but it seems like it went up so high into the atmosphere, and then over the last week, it's just kind of filtered down and come down now, and most of Reading is in this bowl, in this valley where we're surrounded by mountains, but like the city is down in here, and the smoke is just like filtered right on in, and it's sitting here. And there's a huge fire south of us, even bigger than the Carr fire, believe it or not. If there was something bigger, there is. And now there's another fire that just started northeast of us. And then there's a bunch of fires even further south in California, and fires in Oregon. And so the smoke just sits, and it just becomes this toxic wasteland. It just feels post-apocalyptic, dusty, ashy, smoky, dirty, yellow, ugly. Like I haven't seen the color blue in 3 weeks in the sky. I haven't been able to take in a deep breath where I didn't have a ton of anxiety about what am I breathing in. Most days, I've said this already, but I have paralyzing headaches and just can't get up and do much. Yeah, and I think everybody's body's different. Everyone reacts to smoke differently. Everyone reacts to these chemicals differently. Yeah, but it's annoying and it's terrible, and we want our city back. We want life back. And I don't know how long the smoke will stay, because we need pretty severe winds to blow it out, and rains, but not massive, like torrential rains that create mudslides, because that's a whole nother ordeal. The areas where homes were devastated by the fire, the few homes that weren't devastated by the fire, there's a great risk of mudslides now, because they're built into these hillsides. And so now that the fire burned up all the trees and the root system is, not there anymore, there's nothing to hold the ground in place. So if a torrential rain comes through, it could wash out those hills and take out the few homes that are remaining after the fire. So rain isn't always the answer, and at least not in the way you think of it. Like, yeah, of course, water puts out fire, but torrential rain, heavy rain, can actually become a master issue in a hillish landscape like certain parts of Reading are, where the fire was the worst. But like a light rain, a light, nice, needed rain that could clean the air, that would be amazing, on top of winds that push it out. But at the same time, you don't want the winds to be too fierce, because then they'll just ignite the fire worse. So it's like, what do you even pray for? What do you hope for? It's really, in these cases, it's almost a matter of just riding it out. But as for me, I'm leaving North Carolina. I'm leaving California to go to North Carolina. It's where my family lives. It's where I'm originally from. And they're bringing me there for the next 3 weeks to get out of this smoke. I don't know what the long-term effects of this smoke are or will be. No one really knows. I mean, so much of this is new. because even down in SoCal, a lot of the major fires they had there were kind of close to the coastline and could be blown out, but we're not anywhere near coastline. We're not anywhere near fresh air getting in and cleaning things out. And so we're just so stuck in this toxicity. It's just, it can't be good. It cannot be healthy for the community. And I know a lot of people have left. It's like if you had somewhere to go and the means to get there, people left for much longer than a few days. But in most cases, people don't have the means to leave, or they don't have somewhere to go, or they don't have the freedom from their jobs to leave. Life has to go on for most of the community on some level. But as for me, I'm not working at the moment, and I just, because I'm not working, like the staying inside becomes that much more sort of terrible because I can't do anything else. And so you would think, well, I could have probably been recording my videos during that time, but today is probably the best day I've had in terms of mental clarity in 3 weeks. It's actually been a really hard summer for me in a lot of ways, all summer in different ways. But obviously this fire just broke me. I don't have any other terminology for it except that it broke me. And so that's my experience. I cannot speak for anyone else. Other people's experience may have been blissful. I don't know, amazing, way worse, way more devastating. I don't know. That's just my experience. That's been the lens through which I've seen this fire. So please don't take my words to speak for Bethel Church, for the community, for the fire chiefs, for anyone. This is just what I've gone through, and I hope it paints a picture of the circumstances. I think the greatest part of rebuilding now, in my opinion, is obviously the homeowners, making sure they have places to stay and whatever they need, in every way. But I think it's also taking into account all the other people in the community who did not lose homes, but they have lost a lot, and they've gone through a lot that they don't understand. I think also for Bethel, there's a lot of people here who left everything, including family. Not just myself. There's so many people who are here without family that just went through something really crazy, kind of alone. Like, I thank God for my roommates and stuff, but I know, like, there's other people that didn't have, like, even, like, a real sense of community, especially people who newly moved here for school or whatever. And I feel like when we can not just narrowly look through the scope of the people who suffered most severely in loss, and we can widen our scope and take into account a lot of other people who really suffered, whose suffering looked different, I think that will be where the church goes next, and I hope they go there. And, if you're the praying type, which I hope you are, if you watch this channel, pray for the hearts and minds of the community. Pray for healthy grieving. It's not just about rebuilding. It's about taking care of our hearts in the process, about being aware of God's presence in the fire and after the fire, that He is good in all of this, and that it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel it, that it doesn't matter how much someone suffered compared to another person. Like, it's all relative to you and where you're at in life. And yeah, I mean, we're so freaking thankful for all the ministries that have sent well wishes and come here and helped. And I think that we need a lot more help, but I think it's more emotional. And I think also most of that help will come just from the church leaning on each other, like the people, the body, like just coming together in greater ways even as we keep walking through this. But it's messy and it's painful, and there's not a lot good to say yet. There will be. And I don't think we have to rush that and try to over-spiritualize it and make it seem better than it really is. Like, it sucked. This whole thing sucked. The fire was demonic, was terrible, was not from God, and it sucked. And it's okay to say that. But we're going to grieve really well, and God's going to do stuff through this that blows our minds. Bill Johnson said it. He said, You have heard for days the voice of the devourer, but now you're going to hear the voice of the restorer. And I know that's true. That's exactly what's going to happen, and I cannot wait for it, and I already see it. But now we just incrementally step up. And, you can, for those of you who are praying, keep praying. Pray for our hearts. Pray for our hearts. Pray for clarity, for vision, for understanding, for peace, for love in the community, that the unification in the community that this fire has brought would continue, that no man would be left behind, that we would take care of each other, that what we can't bear, that other people from other areas that aren't directly affected can come in and bear for us. I'm jealous for that, because I think Bethel and a lot of ministries in the community have done a lot. And I think we just need time to rest and breathe and take a full look around at what's happened, and feel it. And then when we're ready, start making the steps forward. And I know God's going to do beautiful things through this. So anyway, I know this is like an epically long video, longer than any other one I've ever done, and I thank you if you've actually watched to this far. Sorry for getting emotional a few times. No, I'm not sorry, actually. Like, that's just real. That's what it is. But I really appreciate each of you taking the time to be curious about what life in Redding is like after the Carr fire. According to me. Just me. I'm just a person. And BSSM is going on. It's moving forward. And they're doing everything in their power to rearrange housing, because we know that housing has really gone kind of in a crazy place for people who had arranged housing, and then this fire happened and that changed a lot. But the school is doing what they can do to work that out, bearing in mind that this community is traumatized. Okay, and so I hope there's just a lot of grace from incoming people, and that just may mean that if you're coming here, you may have to come here with even more faith, and by faith more than you originally planned. But God knew this was going to happen, and if you've paid off your tuition and you've made all the necessary plans to come, then, and your housing fell through or whatever, like, he's got a plan. He didn't make a way and provide for you to get here only to just be like, sorry, nowhere to live, guess you can't go. Like, he's going to come through for every single person. And so pray for justice in the housing market right now, and just supernatural provision for people coming through, and for people who live here. That God would be glorified even in those ways. And And just as a side note, I don't know if I've done this on any of my videos. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. But I'm going to put the link to donate to my second year tuition, because I have put next to no effort into fundraising over the last few weeks, because I've just been in another world. And I'm supposed to have my tuition in like 5 days, and I owe $4,200. So yeah, if it's in your heart to support my journey to second year and the call of my life to walk in the kingdom and go into ministry, then it'd be really awesome if you donated. I will put the link down below, and you can click on it, and all the money will go straight to my tuition. And if you would like to donate to me personally above and beyond that, I would love it. I always need help, a lot of it actually, but I walk by faith and not by fear. But yeah, I do need financial help with living expenses and day-to-day life like anybody else. So I will also put my CashApp ID and my PayPal ID and my Venmo ID. Any way that you want to donate, hey, I will always receive it with so much more gratitude than you'll ever understand. So there's always that. School starts very, very soon. Anyway, that is life in Redding after the Carr fire right now, as it stands. 3 weeks in, fire's still burning over 180,000 acres, 55% contained, full of smoke. It all sucks. But Jesus is still on the throne, He's still the king. We love him. We trust him. We know great freaking miracles are going to come from this. He's so good. He's been so near in the midst of it, even in the anger, the grieving, the fear, the frustration, the isolation, the unknown. He's been king, and he's been good. And the devil is going to rue the day that he plotted and schemed out to be a part of this evil. He'll regret it for the rest of eternity. But that's all for me. Thank you so much for spending an hour of your life listening to my voice. I pray that it somehow educated you to my perspective of the fire in Reading, and also gave you something to pray about and consider, and maybe opened even your scope of understanding if you're coming to school of what the community may be like. It's, it may be very much better by the time you arrive. The smoke still may be here on some level, but I hope that if you're arriving in the next few weeks that you will see a different Reading than I'm even communicating right now. This is just where Reading is from my perspective as of August 10th. But yeah, let's believe that God does something amazing speedily, but also not hoping for quick fixes just for quick fixes' sake. This is going to be a journey. And you, incoming first years, and whoever else is watching this, incoming future BSSM students, you will get to be a part of the great restoration of an amazing city and the hand of God moving through here. And we need reinforcements of people with energy and love and life to give that didn't suffer through this to come lift our arms and be in this church with us and remind us of things and just, bring that energy, not fire. We're not singing about fire, but, come lift our arms. I think the church is powerful, but it's tired a little bit, and some reinvigoration of new life and energy and hope and excitement from all of you guys moving here is going to be much appreciated and needed, and I think we can't wait to lean on you a little bit, and also pour into you from the wisdom that we've gained from this crazy experience. So yeah, I bless you guys with every spiritual blessing in high places, and I cannot wait to release more videos because I have to go re-record those other videos and release them, and they'll be a lot shorter than this one, so don't worry. But I haven't forgotten those of you who've asked specific questions, and I will re-record those videos hopefully in the next couple days and gradually put them out well before school starts. So just stay tuned over the next week to 2 weeks, because I'll be able to hopefully post these up on the internet right before I go to North Carolina. So I'll probably have 3 or 4 new videos up live on the channel all at once, kind of thing. Okay. Bless y'all. Have a great, great week and day when you watch this.